till you get to 5-10 million revenue, you don't really need to think about like recurring revenue and like big valuation and stuff like that, right? Like cash collection, not booked revenue, not what is on the order form, what is on, and not the ARR that you're showing to your customers, like how much cash did you collect this month. That counts for everything, and that should be like a very core metric that people look at. When you're building your P&L, you don't really look at cash collected, you just look at like booked revenue and recognized revenue and stuff like that. So that's a very big thing that we've started doing, which is giving a lot of results.
18 months I spent only in the market talking to our customers. Our customers are typical small mom and pop stores, kirana stores. We have this policy in the company that everybody has to be on the road in the market talking to customers. 2 customer conversations probably will give you what is your next thing you will build in your product roadmap.
2009ish is when Flipkart raised their first round of funding from Axel, and that kind of changed things, right? People first started noticing that okay, there is such a thing called startups, right? And the business pages in all of these mainstream newspapers, etc., instead of carrying like some quarterly reports of Wipro and Infosys and whatnot, or talking about who jumped from which company to another, which exec resigned or stuff like that, they started talking about these things called startups, and it became cool. So we had the e-commerce wave. We had 50 plus, 100 plus e-commerce companies, right? I don't know how many of you guys know Jabong, ShopClues. All of these folks, raised significant funding. We don't exist today, of course. Then we had the consumer internet wave, which was basically, in short, an app for everything, right? App for parking, app for food, app for this, app for that, whatever. Then you had the SaaS wave and so on and so forth, multiple waves after. And, startups became cool. And even so, right? As we were sort of rejoicing, as we were like, being so optimistic about all of this, 2021 seemed like an outlier of outliers, right? It seemed too much, right? It's like you've got everything that you've hoped for and it feels a little too much, right? It's like that. So Gunjan and I do a weekly show called The Roundup, where we just cover what's happening in the Indian startup ecosystem. And, it's so difficult, right? We wanted to cheer the fact that Byju's was acquiring one company almost every month, okay? And we wanted to make sense of it. We wanted to also make sense of how Farmeasy went from, $1 billion valuation in April to about $5 billion 3 months later, right? And bunch of things like this, right? And it just boggled the mind. And so I feel like the 2022 market correction downturn was, obviously expected, but it's also a good thing because it, again, refocuses us on the fundamentals, because somewhere I feel we lost sight of what it takes to build a business. And so that is why today's conversation is super important, right? We're going to focus on the fundamentals. We have 2 fantastic entrepreneurs, Ajay and Anubhav, right? And they're going to talk about how to build a business sustainably in a capital efficient way. So Ajay and Anubhav have a lot of common attributes, right? 3 of them I would say the first thing is, both of them are second-time entrepreneurs, smarter, wiser, right? The second thing is, both of them operate in domains where there's a lot of FOMO, right? There's SaaS, for instance, hot, right? Fintech, again, hot. Corners, a lot of funding and so on. So there's a lot of FOMO and stuff. And the third thing is, both of them have chosen to build their businesses in such a sensible way, right? Not get swayed by all of this market, optimism, FOMO, this, that, whatever. So I'm really excited to be talking to Ajay and Anubhav, and yeah, so we'll have a lot of insights I'm sure they'll have a lot of insights to share. So thanks so much for being here, Ajay and Anubhav, and look forward to a fantastic conversation with you guys. So Ajay and Anubhav, thank you so much for making it. Really appreciate it. I think we'll start off with a brief intro of, what you guys do, right? So brief intro of HouseMonk and, your founding, growth, some milestones along the way. So over to you, Ajay.
Okay. So I've been an entrepreneur for maybe about 9 years or so now. I was working in data analytics for about 2 years. Had the itch to start up. Started actually very early in my life. I was just shy of my 24th birthday when I started up.
Wait. By the way, it's Ajay's birthday today. Yeah.
So, more or less, I've been an entrepreneur all my professional life. Very coincidentally, I've also been building in the real estate industry throughout my journey. Multiple attempts. First attempt started by trying to build an app for real estate brokers. This was in 2014, 2015. This was the pre-smartphone, pre-geo era. Like no one really wanted to use what we built. That thing shut down pretty quickly. Next, after that, we built a home rental marketplace. So for those of you who might know Nestaway and No Broker and something on similar lines, we built that for about 4 to 5 years. Was doing reasonably okay. It was not the breakout success that we thought or we wanted it to be, but it was building very well. It was building sustainably. We were making profits. We were building cash flow and reserves. That did well. 2019, we had an opportunity to sell the business. We took that opportunity. We had a decent exit. We were able to return cash back to our investors, and it was a very good learning journey for me and my co-founder Bala is here. Like he's my co-founder.
Hey Bala.
So it was a good experience for us because we realized or we learned what it takes to start a company, build a product, build a team, get to revenues, get to profit. How do you do even something as simple as P&L and cash flow? I know the difference now. I didn't know the difference back then, right? Like so, like that journey kind of like taught all of these things to us. But we really exited because we didn't feel that the time we were spending was justified in building what we were building because the scale was just too small. We wanted to build something that was a lot more scalable. We couldn't see how the marketplace business could grow to 100x where it was. And having seen the real estate industry so up close, we realized that there was an opportunity to build a SaaS play in and around managing real estate. So with that as the aim, like we started our current company, Monk Tech Labs, in 2019. The first product was the House Monk, which is something that is used to manage residential real estate. Recently, we launched the Office Monk, which is used to manage co-working and tech parks. We're launching Mall Monk later this year. That's something that's being used to manage retail spaces in shopping malls, etc. At the moment, we're about a 40-member team. Primarily, we sell to Asia, Southeast Asia, India, and Middle East. Business is going reasonably well. Like we're doubling revenue every year. We've kind of realized that it's a sweet spot for us. Like we've tried growing faster than that in the past because we were given very bad advice that companies at our stage should be growing 300-400% every year. We tried that, didn't work out, burnt a lot of money, burnt our hands, like gave a very poor experience to our customers, to our employees, like realized, no, don't do this, right? So then we've scaled back our ambitions. So we've kind of realized that doubling every year is something that we are able to manage within the confines of who we are and like the companies that we want to build. And we're able to do that more or less profitably. So we're in a very good place in our journey overall.
Awesome. Yeah. Anubhav, more about Rupifi and your journey.
Sure. I think I don't know whether it's more of a coincidence or it's a little bit spooky, but I'll call out few more similarities between Ajay's journey and mine. So number one being I started my career in data analytics. So number two, my first startup I started at the age of 24, which was right from campus actually.
Is it your birthday as well today?
No. Okay, so no. That's not there. That's not on the list right now. It is my third startup as well. What we're doing right now at Rupifi. So similar journey. First one was a disaster is what I would like to call it. I think we were in the wrong space. We didn't know what to do. And took longer than what we should have to wind that business. We should have learned that much quicker. Another similarity was the second setup that we did, which was also a fintech, was in the consumer lending space. 3.5-year journey, and were able to sell that company just like you did. More from a point of view of a closure, right? I think those kind of journeys tell you what not to do rather than what to do. I fundamentally believe people ask that you've been doing startups for so long, this is your third company, you might know, some of the tips and tricks. I always tell them, running a company tells you what not to do. You only learn what you should not be doing by making that mistake. What is to be done is something you will figure out on the journey. So I still don't know the right answer to most of the things, but I know what are the wrong answers. So I think that's very clear. Fast forward to 2020 is when we started Rupifi. It's been 3.5 years. This company has been born out of COVID. Fortunately, this particular company Rupifi was at the right place at the right time. I think we have been very fortunate in terms of our timing. I very strongly believe if we started a year early, we would have struggled. The market was not ready. The ecosystem did not have the right infrastructure. And if we started a year late, then we were late. Right? I think then we would be fighting and the market would have outpaced us. So just a quick overview of what we do. We are in the space of B2B payments. The fundamental thing about B2B payments is it's completely different than how you and I make payments or consumers make payments, because it's nowhere like UPI. When a business makes a transaction with another business, it's much more complex, much more broken, involves multiple steps, and always has some element of credit terms attached to it. So the flavor of lending always comes into play when you talk about B2B payments. It's a field still largely untouched globally. Payments, I think, has shown the world that while for every other app or business that we've seen, things were built in India after some kind of a success outside India had already been demonstrated. So a Flipkart had an Amazon already existing. Zomato and Swiggy also had companies like DoorDash out there. In payments, because of UPI, I think the world knows that we are not behind 2-5 years. We are either ahead or at the same pace, actually ahead. In B2B payments also, one thing that has very clearly come out because of the timing is that Indian ecosystem is definitely ahead of a lot of global companies. So we don't really have a global counterpart to say we are X for so and so, which makes life actually difficult when you go out to sell your product to a customer, because they have not seen something like this before. And it's also difficult when you pitch to an investor, because they think there is something missing as to why somebody did not do this before. So that was the tougher part, but I think also made, once we got to a certain scale, it also made things easier for us, because even till today we have literally no competition. So
Awesome. Yeah. Payments for sure, right? I mean, if anyone has that experience of going to the US or something and trying to get a coffee, and then you're given a handful of change and you look at it as, what is this, right? I mean, I haven't seen this in ages, for sure. Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. Something like that, right? Got it right. Yeah. The fact that you guys are, have started up before, have seen that journey, right? Like Anubhav said, what are the things that you're doing differently this time around? What are those things that you realized, hey, I'm not going to do this, right? How is your current business different from the previous one? So you mentioned scale, for example, right? So scalability was at the core of what you started. So could you talk about that?
So, see, a big reason why we started up again, right, was that at some level we felt that the time that we were spending as entrepreneurs building the business, it was not justified, right? Because it was not a large business, and at some level you have to put a cost on your time as well, right? So that's why scalability was so important, that okay, unless we build a 10 million, 100 million revenue business, it's not, because it's such a long journey. Nothing really happens in 3 years, 4 years. Like it takes maybe a decade or so, right? Like before you can have some kind of meaningful impact. So if you're going to spend such a long time, and these are the best years of your life as well, right? Like your late 20s, 30s, and like possibly early 40s. So you're really at the peak of your life. And if you're going to do something at the peak of your life, like the output also has to be proportionate. And that's when we kind of felt that, hey, what we're doing right now in the marketplace business is never really going to be big. So even if it is generating some cash, like you want to go big, or at least more than you want to go big, you want to have the option that this can become a really big thing, because I'm really spending the best years of my life doing this. So that was a very critical thought for us. And one of the things that we realized is that, so we understood the concept of arbitrage very early, like which is that in a marketplace business, you have no arbitrage over your customers, which eventually means that like, why should they pay you more than your competition? And we realized that there is no arbitrage in marketplaces, or at least that we couldn't figure out what was the arbitrage in our chosen line of marketplace. So we realized, at least in SaaS, there is an arbitrage, which is that you can build relatively cheap from India and export your products like to customers outside. So at least there is a cost arbitrage. And more, we realize that there's a lot of the skill levels in India are increasing. So not just from, we've always been good in product development and engineering, but we're getting much better at marketing and sales and customer success and things like that. So I think like 5-10 years ago, it was a given that, okay, engineering happens from India, but sales, marketing, customer success is going to be co-located with the customer. Now a lot of companies are rethinking that, right? Like increasingly we are seeing, maybe if not the entire team, but a lot of the team is happening. The go-to-market teams are like getting located here. So there's a cost arbitrage here, which is always going to be the case. It's always going to be cheaper for us to build and ship a global product from India than it is going to be for our customers who are actually HQ'd and located, along with the customer. So we realized that, okay, this could be a scalable thing that we do. So let's build a global business from day one. And our first few customers were actually in the Middle East, right? Like we couldn't crack US that early, but we made sure that our first customers were not in India. The next set of customers started coming in Singapore. We actually didn't do India till last year, which was like year 3 or year 4 of our business, right? So that was something very important. Like India to global was a very key part of the story. I think a second thing that we realized is that you have to build margins to your business, because they say, right, like if you buy a product for 100 rupees and sell it for 90 rupees, you can create infinite revenue. And that's what a lot of marketplace and e-commerce companies do, right? They source from their supply at 100 rupees, they give some form of discount and they sell it for 90 rupees and then they claim growth. But that's negative margin. You can't do that.
90 rupees, I mean, I think you're being a little...
I'm not talking big billion day, I'm saying the normal day otherwise. But we were very conscious of margins that, and not just margins, like I started thinking a lot more about gross margins, right? Like, so what really happens is that gross margin is really what pays the salaries, it's really what pays the rent, it's really what pays for your marketing. So we wanted to make sure that our gross margins were very high so that we can finance everything else that we wanted to do. So we were very conscious of this because in a marketplace business, our gross margins were like 10% when we were building the previous company. And 10% is just not enough, right? Like for you to build something meaningful. So global GTM from day one and building something with high margin was something that we wanted to do and we were very clear about from the very first day.
Awesome. Yeah. I think marketplaces itself, the conventional marketplace model is dead, right? I don't think it exists anymore, right? But pure play, you're connecting buyers and sellers on a platform, that's gone, right? I mean, if you look at some of the marketplaces that are really successful right now, whether it is, I don't know, they don't even look like marketplaces, right? Whether it's the Zworks of the world and so on, right? They're layering everything from software to financing to everything, right? Pretty much. So Anubhav, your third time journey, how is it different from the first 2 times?
Sure. So I think few learnings. Again, I'll talk about things that you should not do. Most of my learnings are around that. So the second company that we built, we scaled well. We were able to get capital. We were able to build a portfolio. Very well known in the ecosystem. We're getting M&A offers every now and then. But I think one thing we were missing is connect with the customer. So never went into the market to speak to our customer. Sitting in our office, I was a co-founder, but I was looking at more the risk side of things. So I was only building out underwriting models and doing all the data analytics stuff and looking at data and saying this is a good customer, this is a bad customer, but never really went to speak to the customer. I think that was something we learned that we should have done, because we were actually in the domain of personal loans, and just so that everybody could relate, we were doing personal loans for salaried individuals at 24% plus interest rates. Now that sounds high to everybody sitting here, right? 24%. And we were having customers who were taking that at ticket sizes of 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs. So 20 lakh personal loan at 24%.
And who are these people?
Exactly. So we looked at data and we said maybe these are all subprime customers who are not getting from anywhere else. But to our surprise, 80% of our customers were CIBIL score more than 700, working for the top companies, coming from metros. And we believed that, okay, maybe we're doing something great. That's why these customers are coming to us. Our loss rates were absolutely zero, almost to the level of nil, because the customer profile was great. But we never went into the market to ask, why are you taking this loan from us? Why not from your bank? As a salaried customer, most of the top private banks will give you that loan.
At maybe 15-16%?
Lower than that.
Lower than
right?
that.
I think all of us would have some offer in our inbox of 11.99 or 12.99 personal loans. So what we should have done is gone into the market to understand who are these people, why are they taking it from us? Is it purely because of experience? Is it purely because we were giving them money in the bank on the same day? Does that matter to them? Never did that. And I think what that led to is we were not able to scale this exponentially, even with the presence of technology and the fact that there was a clear demand for this product. So at some point we ran out of money, could not scale it, and the company got acquired. At Rupifi, I think we've done it completely differently. 18 months I spent only in the market talking to our customers. Our customers are typical small mom and pop stores, kirana stores, small pharmacies, small hardware shop, any retailer that exists out there. In fact, today also we have this policy in the company that everybody has to be on the road in the market talking to customers 1 day per month. In the calendar month, 1 day you have to go. Every employee, every person, including the founders, everybody has to do that. So bad day chosen for me because it started raining, but I think that gives you a lot more insights than just sitting there doing a lot of data crunching and all. 2 customer conversations probably will give you what is your next thing you will build in your product roadmap. So that was one learning. The other thing that we learned not to do, which we are doing differently, is in terms of how we build the team. So good is not enough. I think one learning I've had is you need great people in your team. Good is not enough. So in a lot of hiring discussions, in recruitment discussions, when we were talking to people for founding team, etc., we were putting a lot of weight on their background, relevant industry experience. All of that had some weightage if we had to create a scorecard. Attitude, have they worked in a startup before? Maybe they have that risk appetite to jump into an early stage company, because there is hardly any stability when you work for an early stage company that we can promise. So those were things we were looking at. And if there were tick marks on some of these, then this was a good person, so let's go and hire. I think that mentality has completely changed for us. There is a lot of information in the public domain today that a lot of people that we have, the kind of talent we have at Rupifi is like amazing quality. Because we spent a lot of time in understanding why this person wants to come here, what is his passion about joining us, how are they going to behave in a situation where there is a crunch financially in the company, what would they have done in different situations if they were the founder. These kind of questions we asked and try to go deeper when we are getting people on board. And we've had a significantly good experience. We were working remotely for 2 years. In fact, we hired most of the team, 100 plus people remotely, no office, and almost had zero attrition for the first 2 years. And it's not like we had tons of money or we were paying overboard during 2021 times. We were actually not. And I had people coming to me every now and then and telling, I have 50 LinkedIn requests, people giving me offers to join or come for interviews, but we just ignore. So I think those are the kind of conversations you would love to hear from your team. So that was a big learning in terms of how to build a team.
I think, it's really important, right? I mean, and there is a certain difference between good and great, for sure, right? Before we move on, I mean, did you figure out why those guys were taking the loans? I mean, at 25, 26%?
Yeah, I mean, we ran a survey. Again, we didn't go to the market. We just sent them a survey. The maximum people answered that because you are disbursing the money on the same day.
Okay.
And see, technically a personal loan is something that you will go for when you have an emergency, right? It's not something that you are going and taking because if you want to buy a car, you'll take a car loan. If you want a house, you'll take a housing loan. Personal loan is for what? Medical emergencies, some kind of personal emergencies. A lot of people were taking these loans to clear off their credit card bills. 52% people were saying, I am using it to restructure my debt. 24% is better than 36%. I think that's a smart choice.
Crazy. Yeah. Before we move on, right? I mean, I think, this over-indexing on dashboards and numbers, right? I mean, quite a few marketers here. I mean, certainly my friend Sairam will relate to this, right? That over the last 5 years or so, 5-10 years, I would say, I mean, there is so much of tech that, you can look at users doing this, doing that, whatever, that, the old-fashioned stuff of, speaking to customers, users, etc., and product guys also, right? Notorious for this, right? That the old-fashioned thing about talking to users and customers has kind of gone out of the window, I remember in the old days, I mean, I'm talking about 2009 or something, you would see like an, massive uptick in your session time, and we'd be like, oh man, what cool thing did we do on our website that, people are spending that much time, right? I mean, and then you realize, I mean, some moron has just left his tab open or something like that.
Or
right?
it's a bot.
Or it's a bot, right? I mean, yeah, crazy. So, Ajay, we're going to talk about profitability and so on, right? I mean, you've built your business in a very capital efficient way. For 4 years, I mean, you guys were completely bootstrapped, right? So you didn't go, crazy with all the marketing spends and so on and so forth, right? What was the reason to stay capital efficient? And also, I mean, what goes into that mentality? Like, how do you build that into your DNA?
So, to a very good extent, we didn't raise capital not at our choice, but at the choice of the VCs that we were speaking to, right? So they didn't agree to fund us, and we didn't really have any way of building the company in any other way. So we were forced into capital efficiency. And that actually became a very good thing because we don't really have a mentality of excess. So we really think about ROI all the time. Sometimes it's detrimental because for the marketing team and all, I keep asking them, hey, it's been 2 months since we started running campaigns for this country. Like, where is the ROI? Where are the customers? They're like, no, it takes time to nurture and, close customers. So, like, we kind of sometimes take it to an extreme, but everybody understands the intention, which is that, so even our engineering team, and it's kind of drilled into the DNA because for most of the company, we never had money, right? So we were literally living month to month. If a certain customer doesn't pay on time, me and Bala have to choose who doesn't get their salary that month. Right, so we've done that for like so long and for so often that it's like drilled into the DNA. Except maybe people who've joined in the last 6 to 12 months, like because now they know that okay, there is a little bit more money and stuff like that. But for a very long time, like people just did not know those things. So they thought frugally by default, and the money became like a choice much later. So the thought really is that okay, can I do with 2 engineers what my boss is thinking is going to take 4 engineers? Or really becomes like, how do we achieve this with 2 engineers really becomes the question, right? How do I ship this feature in the next 30 days, assuming I have only 2 engineers? Or how do I deliver, let's say, 20 leads with only $2,000 as a budget, right? And not really becomes, how much budget do I need to deliver 20 leads? That's not the thought. Your thought is that like, okay, I have to deliver 20 leads in this budget. Now, how do I kind of like do that? So some of those things are like drilled into the DNA. A lot of this is top heavy. Something I've realized about culture is that it starts at the founder and trickles down. If the founders are excessive in their spending habits and how they're running the company, it trickles down very, very, very quickly. If the founders are frugal, then that trickles down very, very easily. So me and Bala, like because our previous company was fully bootstrapped, right? The marketplace business was fully bootstrapped. So we never knew how to spend money. And that kind of like trickled into every time we make a decision or every time we are in a meeting, we ask those questions on ROI and do we really need to do this? And
But now when you have money, how does it change?
it doesn't matter because now, for example, maybe a company which has 5 mil in the bank, maybe their investors are okay with them. I'm just giving a number. Maybe they're okay if the company takes that 5 mil and gets to, let's say, 2 million ARR. Like, but we are not okay with that because for us that is extremely capital inefficient. If you're going to like burn through 5 million and all you can do is like 2 million ARR, then you're not really doing a good job of deploying the capital, right? So our thought really goes into like how do we maximize every dollar that we have. So even with the money that we have right now, it's really just a question of maximize every last dollar that you have.
So, Anubhav, I read your LinkedIn post about turning around to profitability in about 5 months, right? And in fact, I mean, that kind of inspired the theme for the event itself, right? Which is do more with less. So could you talk about that journey?
Yeah, so I think ours was a slightly different story. I think we, again, realized it the hard way, what you should not do when it comes to raising capital. During 2020, 2021, late 2021, when things were still looking great, I think we had our best few months in terms of scale, and there was a lot of inbound interest in terms of VCs wanting to put in money into our company. We wanted to raise a 10-15 million kind of a round. We didn't want to go anything beyond that because as per all our projections, I think that was enough for us to get to the next stage. But there was so much interest. And we all know, with Tiger coming in, overnight valuations were just doubling, right? We had one term sheet, we had a call with Tiger, the next term sheet comes at double the valuation, and it was just crazy. And as a founder, you don't know what to do, right? I had not been in that situation before. So you have no playbook in terms of raising money that you can copy paste.
So 2021, Tiger averaged almost a deal a day.
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Right, just let that sink in, right? I mean, forget about like doing due diligence for whatever weeks and months or whatever, and then rolling out a term sheet. Like it was a deal a day, basically.
Yeah. So the partner we were speaking to, we saw his profile. He had done like 62 deals in a year. I was like, great, let's make one more. So what eventually happened is we ended up raising little more than double than what we wanted. Now the same issue, where to deploy that money. If you have that much money, how can you grow faster with that? So I think what happened is, and I think that the entire ecosystem is guilty for doing that, including us, is we spent that money in getting more people on board. We didn't have a marketing cost because in our business, customer acquisition cost is always almost zero. So from that standpoint, we are never burning money to get customers. Customers actually, there's a lot of pull in what we do. So ours is a pure product-led growth. All we have to do is go to a Flipkart or a Jumbo Tail or like a Zeetwork, because we do B2B marketplaces and we work with them. We just integrate inside their app and customers just come to us because they're buying, they'll see us on the checkout page and they'll use Rupifi to make a payment or to get credit. So at least we were not spending money on ads or marketing, but we said that, hey, if 20 people can do so much business, then let's have 100 people. I think that was a very bad decision. We did that for a good period of time. Even when market started showing correction, I think somewhere we were like, we still have so much money in the bank, we don't really have to change directions in terms of how we are going. But then there was one instance where there was this small company which beat us in one of the conversations with a client, where we had pitched something to one of the B2B marketplaces, and very surprisingly, because it didn't happen to Rupifi before this, they came back saying, no, we are going ahead with another player. And I was like, but there is no other player in the market, who are you going with? I've never heard of them, etc. And they said, no, they have a better value prop. So I was like, fair enough. I think competition is good for us. It will keep us always on our toes, and we'll now not be complacent, and we'll try to keep improving. But then we did some research about that company. We had always taken pride in our technology. Like we are very far superior in customer experience, how we've created the payment layers, etc. When I did research on that company, I figured out that they also have an amazing product. They are much younger than us, with 1/5 an engineering team than us. And that really started, this thought in my mind that what are we doing wrong? Why do we need 5 times the team to deliver the same product, the same experience to our clients? Why are we burning 5x to get to the same level when somebody is able to do it at 20% the cost? And
so just a quick point on this, right? I mean, we often accuse marketing of being extravagant with dollars, but engineering is notorious for not having a sense of ROI, right? I mean, because most engineering leaders, they'll give you all the mumbo jumbo of why you need a 20-30% team for this or for that, whatever. And as a non-tech founder, you can't really contest that also too much, right? But it's when you see these examples of so-and-so company doing that, like for instance, I mean, similar experience, right? I mean, not really a competitor, but they sell to the same market, and I saw that they had a third of our engineering team, and they had 3 products, right? And that kind of blew my mind, right? In some sense. Yeah, sorry.
I can actually give one point here. A big reason why founders do that is that it's easy to defend to investors that you have a large engineering team, because you just say that I'm building IP that I'm not yet monetizing, or this is going to enable me to scale from 10 mil to 100 mil. So you can say all those stories, true or not different, but they'll buy that story. But marketing, instantly you can measure what is your ROI, what is CAC to LTV, you can measure all of these things. So that's why it's very difficult to do that on the marketing side. But engineering, you can be only 20-30% efficient, and people still let it fly.
Hey folks, Roshan Karyappa here from the Startup Operator. If you have a product or service that is relevant to startups and you're targeting founders, operators, or investors in the Indian startup ecosystem, the Startup Operator platform is the best place for you to deploy your advertising or branding budget. So drop us a line on the email mentioned below or DM us on social media to learn about sponsorship opportunities like ad insertions or branded content and so on and so forth. I'll look forward to hearing from you. No, but there's a real problem on the engineering side, right? I mean, if you look at Zerodha, for example. Zerodha is a 40-member engineering team, right? Managing India's largest broking company, right? Insane. And I think also, I mean, not to delve too much on this, it's also because I think there's a real gap in terms of engineering leaders, right? At the middle, right? The people who have spent 7-8 years, 10 years and so on, right? Because, I mean, engineers over the last 5 years have changed jobs more times than I think a Punjabi rapper will change outfits, but but it's been that, right? So you don't have that experience at the middle level, which causes a huge problem in terms of engineering ROI and so on.
So I think the reason behind that is also enough visibility of P&L to your engineering leaders. So I still remember when we got our head of engineering, fantastic guy, still probably the best person I would have got on board till date, and the only person who, if he comes to me and says that I now want to quit, I would probably do everything in my capacity to stop him from going. When we got him on board, we wanted to give him full freedom, flexibility. I told him that how would you like to build this team, and he was like, created a flow chart, a diagram that these blocks we are building, I need to have 3 people in every block, right? Now, that's a lot, because B2B payments is invoicing, reconciliation, taxation, accounting, payments, settlements, lending side of things, LOS, LMS. There are 10 blocks. Are you telling me you'll need 30 engineers to begin with on day one, and then you will divide it in terms of front end, back end, blah, blah, right? What is the cost? Nobody asked. We didn't ask. He never thought that do we really need to spend that kind of money. I think by giving him and everybody in the team, that view of P&L has changed things for us. So you asked like, what changed in 5 months? I think there was this, so we have this core team meeting, which is like 20 people in the company who are functional heads for everything. I got all of them in the room and told them, guys, this is what our P&L looks like. It's shit right now. We are burning like a lot of money every month. And you can all see what all your departments burn, right? And you need to ask yourself, does that make sense? And I think what has happened is that thing has trickled down, as Ajay was saying. It's all comes from the top. That sensitivity towards profitability and cost has now got deeper into the mid-level. In fact, sometimes I have to tell them that, guys, we need to not always look at everything from a cost and profitability perspective, because a lot of times when you are building new products, you need to also look at some investment that will be there, some experimentation that will be there before you start looking at whether it makes sense to do this or not. But I think that has been the reason for change. It's not just someday a founder wakes up and says, okay, let's become profitable and next quarter you will start seeing profits. Never happens that way. I think if I break down our P&L, we are a lending company. We make revenue from interest. We give some interest cost to the lender because we are taking money from them and then lending in the market. There is a credit loss because it's unsecured, so people won't pay back. There is some cost of getting that money back, right? Then there are some overhead expenses in terms of people calling you, chatting with you on WhatsApp, telling my payment is not reflecting, I made the payment, why are you still calling me? All that happens. So there are like 7-8 functional teams. Unless each of those functional leaders understand what they are not doing right, how can they be more efficient, can technology change things for them, can optimization happen, you cannot be profitable. It's not like I'll let half the team go tomorrow and I'll be profitable. Yeah, maybe that is a step required at some point. And I won't say we've not done that. Because obviously, like I said, we had gone overboard in terms of getting people on board. So there were some tough decisions.
That can't be your primary strategy,
yeah, but
right?
That's not the only way for you to overnight become profitable. So you'll have to deep down look at every single metric in your business and understand where you're not doing well. I think now what has happened is we do this weekly connect within the company where the P&L is black and white in front of everybody. In fact, I've got this feedback from a lot of founders that they don't normally have that P&L out so transparently in front of their teams because of different reasons. But I think it's okay. I think if you don't show people what you are expecting out of them, then how do you expect them to deliver? Profitability is something that people need to understand.
Yeah, and I think, as founders, right, I mean, you tend to sort of overestimate how difficult this would be also, I feel, right, being at the opposite end as like someone who leads a function, right? I mean, I was at one of those meetings where this whole cost-cutting exercise happened, and believe me, it's no fun at all, right? To suddenly have like less than 50% of the budget that you originally budgeted, right? And obviously you lose your shit, but then you figure out a way to kind of survive and thrive, right? And then you think, hey, hang on, I mean, like if I test all of my hypotheses, right, in terms of, okay, why do I need to spend these many thousands on LinkedIn, for example, right? Why can't I work my email nurture a little bit more, right? Because over a period of time, I think you kind of get used to things, right? The way things are. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I have to spend this much on LinkedIn, or I have to do this event, or I have to do X, Y, or Z things, or I need this one person for content and one person for this, and so on and so forth. But I think this is also a great time to test those hypotheses and figure out like really, I mean, do you really need to do that, or can you figure out a smarter way, right? I mean, and why do you hire smart people if they can't figure out smarter ways to do things, right? So, Ajay, you spoke about culture and DNA of being profitable, right? Let's get in the weeds right now and figure out like operationally what does it take to be profitable, right? Because one thing you learn in SaaS is that booked revenue and collected revenue are very, very different things, right?
So, okay, so this is once again from a company DNA perspective. Like, if you want to position your company for raising a big VC round, especially in the SaaS world, the only metric that counts is ARR, like annual recurring revenue, and you optimize your entire business only for ARR, right? And I'll tell you some mistakes we did in doing something like this. So let's say a customer will say, hey, look, I'll take your product, but I need you to do this customization for me, right? You do that anyway, and instead of charging a one-time fee to do that customization, we'll just increase the ARR by, let's say, $200 a month, right? Why? Because the $200 a month to me translates to $20,000 in extra valuation, right? Because like 100x of MRR is like an accepted SaaS valuation, so you normally start thinking that way. Although you don't think about, hey, my cost in doing that is probably $3,000, which I have to incur now. There's the likelihood that in a very early stage SMB-led SaaS, the customer is going to leave in 3 months. Nobody else is going to want that feature that I've built. You don't think all of this because you're optimizing for one metric, ARR, right? And we've made this mistake at least 15-20 times before we realized that, oh no, you should not be doing this. Learned it too late, right? So I think that's a very classic.
Valuations are vanity, cash is sanity, right? Basically.
How do you come up with these things, dude?
I can get one or two of these zingers right, basically, usually.
So we didn't really like think about some of these things and especially when you're on the fundraise trail, right? Like that last, like, okay, you're close to signing the term sheet. So every extra 10% bump in booked revenue or like signed contract, like it has such a big thing because at that time the VC is like, oh, it's a hot deal, like it's coming together. So you really want to do those things and then you do these really stupid things. Actually, that was not the only mistake. The mistake is continuing that after the round got closed. Right? Like then you should have course corrected anyway and come back to charging for whatever service you're delivering and keeping your books in order, which we did not do. Right? We continued that very wrong practice for a very long time. Big mistake. Second big mistake is that you sign the order form from the customer and then you assume, okay, they're just going to pay on time, and never happens. Like especially in B2B SaaS, if you're doing go-to-market where India is like broadly on your horizon as a customer base, and applies to most emerging economies as well, nobody pays on time. It's an easy 60 to 90 day collection term. Nobody keeps a credit card on file. Like RBI fucked that anyway. Like so you can't even do that if even if the customer is willing to do it, which most customers are not. Even most customers don't even go on to an annual plan, right? So a monthly payment of let's say 20,000 rupees for my subscription comes to me like 60 to 90 days late. And you can't build a business like this, right? And the horrible thing is we were told all of this on day zero, and then we chose to ignore that advice and say, no, we'll be the anomaly. And then like 3 years later, we realized, oh shit, like all this people told us in the very beginning. So I think collection discipline is super important. I think for anyone who's bootstrapping and starting something new, I would actually recommend keep annual plans as your default and get your customers to pay upfront. You will not convert a lot of customers. Your conversion is going to be lesser. People are going to want monthly plans, but that cash flow is too important. And the retention rate of customers on annual plan is extremely high. Because what happens is that, especially when you're doing SMB onboardings, right, like which is like smaller customer onboardings, it takes them 3 to 6 months to get onto your system and learn your system. Most of them lose interest halfway through, right? And then they churn in 2-3 months. And a second thing that we realized is that when we moved customers onto annual plans, they invest a lot more into the system. They really learn it well. So then the renewal becomes very easy. So it was like a two benefits. Like renewal is also higher, cash flow also gets managed. So some of these are like very important. Like a lot of SaaS subscriptions. So, but on the other side, for vendors and subscriptions that we were using, we moved everything away from annual plans to monthly plans. So that like our customer collection cycle is annual, but our vendor payment is monthly, right? So all of these like cash management tricks like help immensely. Wherever possible, if you're going mid-market enterprise, and so we sell a lot in GCC, which is essentially a cash-rich economy. A lot of customers have the money in the bank to pay like a 3-year license fee upfront. If you give a significant discount on your payment terms, right? You should do those things. Especially if you're bootstrapping, right? Because you need that cash. Like the cash can do so many other things for you. Till you get to 5-10 million revenue, you don't really need to think about like recurring revenue and like big valuation and stuff like that. You can do those things, right? So really optimize for cash, right? Like cash collection, not booked revenue, not what is on the order form, what is on and not the ARR that you're showing to your customers. Like how much cash did you collect this month? That counts for everything, and that should be like a very core metric that people look at. When you're building your P&L, you don't really look at cash collected. You just looked at like booked revenue and recognized revenue and stuff like that. So that's a very big thing that we've started doing, which is giving a lot of results.
No, for sure. I mean, it's very weird, right? So I operate an enterprise SaaS, and for a long enough time, we didn't even have a collections team, right? I mean, it was just the finance guy going that, hey, I mean, yeah, we've raised that invoice about sometime in the last few months. I don't know. I mean, it still hasn't come in, right? So
the first time I spoke to somebody who was in RevOps and Sales Ops, I thought that's a made-up job. Like I thought that's a fake job. Like, what is RevOps? And then when we started having these problems, I realized, okay. Like I understand.
Okay, this is what they do.
I understand why people in RevOps exist.
Yeah, but it's hard, man. I mean, because especially when a deal closes, right, and especially if you think about enterprise SaaS, I mean, you've probably spent 6 months selling to this person, and finally, you have an LOI, or you have like, okay, TK will start working with your types. I've seen cases where people don't even like sign off on BRD and start working on stuff, right? Because I mean, think about it. If it's a large institution, right, and they're paying you many tens of thousands of dollars, or perhaps like close to $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, you need some serious balls to say, boss, I understand, right? This is very, very good, but let's sign off on all of these things, right? So yeah. So Anubhav, Ajay mentioned, collected cash as one of those metrics. Any other metrics that, founders should focus on in terms of like profitability, right? I mean, what are those top 2 or 3 metrics that you keep an eye out for on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure. So I think for us, like I spoke about, there are, as a lending business, fundamentally you cannot be making or losing money even on day one, right? Because you are in the business of giving loan, you are collecting that back, net of losses, you should always be positive. So contribution margin, which is basically your gross revenue minus direct costs, becomes your CM1 or contribution margin 1. And when you subtract your variable costs, which are also associated with it, both direct and indirect, then you get your contribution margin 2. Below that is only the engineering team cost, right? So I think one metric that we try to measure is at what multiplier of scale will that start giving us profitability at an EBITDA level, right? Because while there is a path to profitability, even if you are EBITDA negative, and companies like Zomato can always come in media and post 1 month of positive EBITDA, but next month again go back because there was one single adjustment that was driving it. But what is long-term
like
sustainable?
Tax refund or something.
Yeah, but
I thought you'll say community adjusted EBITDA and
adjusted EBITDA. But what is critical for you to know is this path to profitability, how sustainable it is, and are you on the right track? I think what we try and do is always draw a curve in terms of where is it trending, and what is the sensitivity of this to different factors. Knowing that what can go wrong is also very important, because last 5 months when we've been on this path to profitability, things are going great. Now we are in green, but those are because of certain things that we've done. Some of those changes are brute force, and some of those changes are more efficiencies and long-term developments that we've done. Whatever we've done as brute force can very quickly evaporate away. So having a sense of what those are and how they can come back again is very important. So I'll give an example. So in March we had this one expense. So Flipkart being our largest client, we actually are fortunate to have them as a client, but there are also drawbacks with working with a large company like Flipkart. So what they do is they do this big billion day sale in October, and they also do a similar sale called Vyapari Divas on the B2B side during first part of the year. What they expect all their partners to do during those is also take part in marketing, because they are burning a lot of cash during that time. So they also want the partners to burn cash during that time. So they always ask you, what is your budget? How much are you going to burn? Right? Those are one-off events which will come, go away. But working with Flipkart, there is an expectation that you will have to continuously do that. So like in last few months, we didn't have those expenses coming in, so we were in green. In October, it's going to come back. We know that as part of Big Billion Day, we have to be part of that. Otherwise, what will happen is we will not feature in the top payment options on their checkout page, because we don't have an offer associated with Rupifi. Somebody else will come up. An HDFC Bank may come up. A phone pay may come up, right? And these are cash-rich companies. So there is a very high chance that they would be running some kind of a marketing at that time. So most of the marketing we run during Big Billion Day sale, we've seen that the ROI is good. It's always positive. It's not that burn is for nothing. But it will come into your P&L, because the impact of that will show in your P&L 2-3 months later. Customer will swipe today, use it, you will book that revenue sometime later. The actual revenue will come much later, but the expense will happen right now. So knowing your P&L sensitivity to these one-off events is also very important. Otherwise, you'll always have a graph going up and down, and you'll keep wondering, what am I not doing right? What did I not account for? So that's one thing that we try to always look for.
Yeah, great point.
All right, guys, thank you so much. That was a very insightful conversation. I was just chatting with some people at the back, and they were pointing out a few things. I'm sure many of them would like to interact with you, so I hope you guys are staying back. That kind of brings us to the end of the program. But the night is still young. We are at socials, and you have to socialize in social, so please do hang around. To conclude, as we say, please like, share, subscribe the Startup Operator podcast. The social links are right here. And I know many of you all have clicked a lot of pictures, and while you're uploading them, please do tag us. That helps us. So yeah, I guess with that, we come to an end for the program.